Hi, Sheila with Creative Aging. We're gonna make peacock feather bookmarks, or they can just be small paintings. You can, of course, cut your paper down to any size that you want. I usually deliver the watercolor paper in a book, and so you can do it as a half sheet if you want just a small painting, or you can cut it in a fourth and make it into a bookmark if you wanted to do that. And this is a great project to practice small point brush techniques, and I think it should be fun. Here's a couple different ones. You can tell the colors are just a little bit different, so you can of course alter it to make it exactly how you'd like. And with this project, we don't need a ton of water. Like, the brushes are gonna hold just the perfect amount of water that you're gonna use. So that's why the small brushes, they don't hold that much water. And so the colors are gonna be bright. All right, some of our watercolor projects, we use a lot more water and we kind of make it into a wash where we can mix the colors. This is going to keep them really separate because I wanna show off the greens. And you can tell there's greens, there's a little bit of yellow. Once you put the yellow on top of the green, it's gonna turn into kind of a lime green. And there's a little hint of browns. And so you're gonna get a variation, and that's what's gonna make it interesting. So we wanna make it to where there's a lot of texture and a lot of colors. Okay, all right. And so you're gonna need your paper. You need a couple brushes. I recommend a small point brush. And the watercolor set, any kind that you have, will be just fine. And then you need a cup of water, of course, and a paper towel in case you do want to blot something. If you get anything too dark, you can just blot it. You may not need that paper towel today, but just in case, it's good to have it handy because once it dries, it's harder to lift your colors. I'm going to put these kind of in there so you can see them as we work. All right, so let's start. I'm trying to make it to where you can see everything in the frame. I wanted to get really close up since this is a smaller painting, but it's hard to get the cup of water and everything in it, so you may not see my cup of water, but just know that I'm dipping my brush, and pretty much in between every color I'm going to be getting it wet. So let's start with the center of the feather. And I'm gonna start with greens because we can always add brown and we can always darken this center up, but I'd rather start with something lighter. So this set has 3 greens. You can really use any green to start. I'm going to go with maybe a darker. And because this set hasn't been used for a little while, I'm gonna make sure that it's got a lot of water on it to start because it's so dry. So now use this like we've done before, kind of like a pencil. You don't wanna press the paintbrush all the way down because it's gonna make the line too thick. So be careful and just pretend like this is an old-fashioned pen, an old-fashioned ink pen, and just use it like you're drawing. And so start at the bottom, and we're just gonna do a line straight up, and it doesn't have to be straight, so you can kind of curve, make it curly, and then stop about, third of the way. And we'll start with this same color. And you want a variation. I like both brushes because you want some thick lines and some thin lines. And we're just gonna layer. We're gonna be doing lots of layering, so it's not going to come together till the end. And so from this stem, go ahead and start doing your little feathers. And so you might want to do, you can even start by pressing down more at the stem and then lifting and lightening up so it gets thinner at the edge. So play with this technique. If it's easier, sometimes it's easier to start light and then you end up getting heavier. So you can even start by going out this way and going in. And at this point, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna layer so many colors on top that most of these might be even covered. And you know, feathers, they kind of go a lot of different directions. So I'm not using that much water. I'm letting my brush use the color until it's pretty much gone, and then I'm gonna put more water on my brush and get more paint. So at this point I want a little more water. And I just think it's easier. You can, of course, do the multiple colors. I just think it's easier to start with one color and then layer the other colors on top. And you might start getting these to where they're going more up. And so right here, let's stop because we're gonna do this later. This is gonna be a lot more color. So we're gonna leave this blank for a minute. Let's just focus on the greens right now. And now let's go ahead and add a different shade of green. So wash your brush. And let's go the lighter green and make sure that there's a lot of water since these sets might be kind of dry depending on when you used it last. I haven't used this one in months, so I know that it needs some water. And we can use the same brush or we could switch brushes. I'm gonna use the same brush for a little bit and then I might switch brushes. And so just go in between. And you can go on top too. So we're gonna add so many other layers. I like to go over some of it too, because then it's gonna make a new shade of green. So this project is very repetitive, which hopefully is relaxing. That's why a lot of people like the adult coloring books, because it's repetitive and it lets your mind just kind of relax. And sometimes that's the state where it's like meditation, you know, that you can process a lot of stress and a lot of things that maybe you don't realize you need to process. So you may as well just zone out and just do this project. So see, sometimes I'm going over the lines that I already did with the dark, and sometimes I'm not. I just think this is going to create a lot more colors, so there's no right or wrong way to do this today. Actually, there is a wrong way. If you only use one shade of green, that is wrong, and it's not going to look good. So the purpose of this is to really mix our colors and really get this point brush technique down, and you can learn a lot of control, and this will help you in all of your painting and drawing. Okay, now let's switch to the little tiny brush, and you can add a few more greens or you could switch to a yellow. I'm gonna lift this up so you can see it up close, how it's looking. So let's add a little bit of yellow, and we might even add some more darks. So I'm gonna show you the yellow. And this tiny brush will not hold much paint or much water, so you might need to dip it more often. And this one, we definitely want to go over some of the greens we've already done, because that's going to create the pretty colors that we like. And for some reason, like I really like with the tinier brush, I like to start on the edge and go in towards the center, because then it gets you a really nice point. And you can use a lot more of the yellow because we're going to mix these colors. So go over some of your greens. And some of them that get too yellow, we're going to go over it again with green later. So like I said, there's really not a wrong way. This project is, even if you do something, if there's too much yellow, you add more green on top and it fixes it. So this is a good watercolor project because it's easier. Some of them, if you make a mistake, it's a little bit harder to fix. Watercolor is the least forgiving of the paint styles, which is why a lot of people get frustrated. So see, this tiny brush, I am dipping it in color every single time, and I'm having to use a lot more water. So the smaller the brush, the less water and the less paint it's gonna hold. So you just have to pretty much dip it each time. And I'm going to add some more greens with the tiny brush too, just to give it, I want some of these feathers to be tiny and some to be bigger. It's going to give it a lot more depth and texture. And so your feather is going to look like a healthier bird. You don't want to look like your poor peacock lost all of its feathers. So now, this is where it gets really fun. So I'm going to let you look up close. It looks pretty stripy. Now adding more of the middle green is going to help because it's going to tone down the dark and the light, and especially using the little brush. So I think it's going to look better and kind of come together for you. And so this is where you want to be more slow and more thoughtful and mindful of where you put your colors. So at that point we just wanted lots of background layers and lots of colors, but now is the more detailed part. You really need to slow down and think about it. So right here, that's really extreme dark to light. I'm going to put this lighter green right on top of my dark green, just so it's not such a big jump. And sometimes I don't even want to do it all the way. I might just do a little bit on the edge. Maybe you just want to exaggerate some of the points and make it really curvy looking. So see right there, I just went on the edge just to bring that point out, so I didn't go all the way into the center. And sometimes you want to use more water because you might want it to be lighter. So this is where you can really play with how much water you're using, because you don't want to cover up all the work you did, but you might want to add a little bit of color. So just a tiny bit more water on this part. And if you see a huge white space, then that's where you really might want to focus your attention. Because you don't, the white space is, negative space is always just as important as your positive space. So negative space is anything that's showing the paper. And that becomes just as much as the art as what you're showing. So you really need to think about, if there's a lot of white in certain parts, is it pleasing to the eye? And if it's not, figure out what you want to do to it. Now you can always leave parts, you know, and it makes it more interesting. So this negative space makes the feather look more curved. Just make sure that it's intentional. Anything you do on your paper should be thoughtful and intentional. Okay, so let's look again. So it's coming together. I'm gonna let it dry for a minute and let's focus on the eye of the peacock feather. Now, this part, we're going to, you can really use either brush. I'm gonna use the bigger one. Actually, maybe not. Let's use the small one. Just because if you press harder, this small one, it'll be okay if you have a thicker line. And I want you to use I want you to get clean water. I'm gonna switch my water out, so I'm taking this one away and I'm going to pour a clean water. You don't want the green to get into the pinks and purples up there. So we want to keep it very separate. So take your tiny brush, rinse it out really well. And figure out if you want, you could do pinks or purples. And you're gonna just draw with that color. So I'm gonna use maybe the in-between. So I'm gonna use this purple, but this one's pretty too. You can really use any color. You could use dark purple. Depends on what your set has. And I know the dark purple looks black, but it's not. It's dark purple. And so I'm gonna use, actually, I changed my mind. I'm gonna use this dark purple because I know everybody has this set. The bigger set, some people have and some people don't. But everybody has a set with a dark purple and a light purple. So let's go and use the dark purple to draw the shape up here. And this doesn't have to be perfect. It's almost like an upside down heart. And you're just going to, and if you're just going to take your paintbrush and draw it in there. Now, if this makes you super nervous, you can use a pencil to draw it and then cover it up with your pencil mark. Totally up to you. And then I'm just gonna start doing some colors right next to that. I guess I'll do a little pink. Actually, no, I'll do this, actually, trying to think. I'm gonna switch this one up a little bit. Yeah, I'll do this pink. Just because I'll tone down the edge a little bit. So I'm gonna go over my purple. And I'm re-dipping it because I want it to be bright. So see, it kind of mixed into the purple. Tone the purple down. And now I think I might do a little yellow. And of course you can look at a real peacock feather on your phone and just do whatever colors you see. These are just, I'm doing whatever colors I want, so it's not necessarily realistic, but you can make it realistic. And so I'm using this pink, and I'm even going into the pink a little bit because it's going to make it a little orange. And this also makes it to where you don't have to have straight lines, since some of you stress out about your straight lines. This is a good way to cover up any mistakes just by blending. Okay, so let me show you. So I did just a little purple, a little pink, and a little yellow. And now let's go ahead and draw the center part, and then we'll do the background a different color. But we need the shape because we're going to keep all these colors separate. So the center part is also kind of like an upside down heart. Now usually that's blue and purple, so I'm gonna do blue and purple. So I'm gonna do a dark blue, and I actually want it to be pretty dark. So so basically where the stem is gonna be, so think about an upside down heart. So, and you're gonna do the same thing, just draw with your paintbrush or draw with a pencil and then paint over it. So upside down heart, and then let's fill that in with blue. We'll do purple on top of it and filling it in like, so you can see mine is not perfect or anything. And it wouldn't be perfect because it's actually an animal. So it's not like it's gonna be a perfect upside down heart. It's gonna have it, you know, an organic shape. And then I'll do a little light blue around that. Okay, and I'm still using my tiny brush. So I'll just do a little bit of light blue on the edge. And see, I'm going to go over some of the blue too. So I'm going to bring some of the light blue and the dark blue. Okay. And now let's do a little bit of purple maybe at the bottom or in the center. So I'm going to bring more dark purple. And you know, at this part, you can do just a little bit in the middle of it. You can kind of maybe make lines. So I'm going to actually bring lines in. Like kind of like a burst of color through there. I guess I was thinking starburst of color. It looks like a firework or something what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense. And hopefully you can see it. It's subtle, but you'll probably be able to see it in the picture I take attached to the lesson plan a little bit better. And so now, let's figure out what color we want to do back here. You can pick any color. I'm going to do a red. And this way, the red would be good because if I accidentally go into my yellow, it's going to be fine and it'll look kind of orange. So I'm just trying to make it really easy to where the colors, if they mix into each other, it's still going to be okay. And so just go behind everything that you've done. And you know what, for this part, you could switch brushes. You can do the small brush still, or you can continue with you can do a bigger brush. So just think about what's easiest for you. And I'm turning it upside down so I don't put my hands on any of the paint that's still wet. So I'm going into my yellow on purpose because it's going to make a little bit of orange. But you still have to be very careful with this part. Go slow. And if you wanted to lighten that up any, you could definitely mix some yellow in there and purposely make it orange. And I'll do that just to show you. So I'll bring a little bit more orange. So I'm going to put yellow right on top of where I just went. Maybe I'll bring this yellow into the red. Just to show you the difference. It's just going to tone it down a little bit. Not much because the red is definitely bright, but I actually think it helps. I feel like it was pretty harsh, and I think just blending these two together is going to help. Okay. So it's subtle, but it makes a difference. Now, let's let that dry. Now, this one has some really bright yellow lines. You, of course, can do that. I just wanted to show you kind of the difference. So you can do that, and you can even let this dry and then do some bright yellow on top just to give it that effect. This one has, they're slight, so I'll do that at the end to show you. So that was, I have to let it dry, and then I can do some yellow, more yellow on top. But let's go ahead and do the green while we're letting it dry. So we're gonna do the same thing all over again. You can switch back to your green water. And so one water is probably gonna have a lot of purple in it, and the other water is just green. And so I'm gonna switch back to my original cup. I always have 2 cups. But for you guys, usually we get you clean cups throughout the whole project, but since we're not there, you might as well just have your own cups ready to go. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna start with a light, well, you can start with a light green, dark green, but we're gonna layer our greens and just go from the purple all the way to the edge. Now at this part, you want it to be really pretty and curvy. And it's gonna go all the way out. So whenever you're doing it, you can turn your paper if that's easier for your hand. So this is going to be basically all the way around it. There's going to be green out. So that's my first layer. Let's go ahead and add some darks. And like we did before, we can continue with the big brush, and then we're gonna switch to the small brush at the end. So kind of in between each one, do some darks. And remember to play with how much you're pushing down on your brush. So I want you to look really closely. You can tell when I was very light and I barely used the tip of the brush, and then you can tell up here where I pushed a little bit harder. So this is really gonna make a difference in the outcome of what your painting is gonna look like. So feel free to always turn your paper while you're painting. You don't have to leave it stuck in the same place. It's easier to sometimes pick it up and turn it. And you might want to even, so right here, you might want to add one so it looks a little more natural to where it goes right outside, because it's going to be curling up. So now let's switch to small brush and get some yellow. I'll turn it back up, right side up for you. And so let's add the yellow, and then we might even add some little bits of brown. That's gonna be something we may or may not do at the end. So take your yellow and layer over some of these colors. So I'm re-dipping it every time, if you've noticed. So I'm not using a lot of water, I'm just re-dipping in the paint every time I put the color down. Hey, there's a lot of yellow in the top, and I actually don't hate it. So it's different than the other ones that I did, but I think I'm gonna leave it. I kind of like how yellow and golden it is up there. And so at this point, I really want you to pause and look at what you've done and think about what you like or don't like about it. And this is what you need to work on. So if there's a little spot you don't like, figure out what to do. I do not like my stem at all. I'm not sure if you can tell. It looks faded to me and kind of looks sloppy. See right here? And these are too dark, and then the stem should be a little bit darker. So I'm for sure gonna work on the stem. That's what I don't like about mine. So you guys figure out what you don't like about yours and kind of work on it. At this point, you should have a good feel of what you're doing. So this is where you can use a little bit of brown, or you could use more, dark green. I'm gonna use brown, and I'm not gonna use that much. So I'm just using a tiny brush, and I'm gonna be more careful. So put a little brown on this brush, and I'm gonna go over the line. And I want it to go up. I want it to go up into here too. So, because the stem kind of looks like it goes into the eye of the peacock. So I'm gonna go all the way down. And that is very dark. So I'm gonna use my blotter. And I'm gonna blot some of it. And then I'm gonna go over it with water right here. I just wanna tone that down a little bit. So take some water, not too much, and I just want you to go over the dark up there a tiny bit, because you don't want it to be an obvious stripe. So I'm gonna go over it, over that brown with just water. And I'm gonna go all the way down just to kind of blend it into the green so it's just not so obvious. Because there would be shadows, but it wouldn't be that obvious where it's like a big old stripe. And so at this point, I've got brown still on my brush, and I'm gonna bring a little bit of brown into some of the green. And of course, this is a step you do not have to do. If you don't like the brown, don't do the brown. And I'm gonna do green on top of that brown too. So we're gonna go get more dark green, and I'm gonna go alongside the brown. And I'm gonna go over the brown and go to the side of it. And then I'm gonna bring that out. So I'm gonna bring some of that color back out, because the center of your stem is usually the darkest, so I wanna drag some of that brown and some of that green out. And you can also just use water to do this, so get more water on your brush and keep dragging some of the brown and some of the green out. And if you need to put more green on it, that's fine too. So get some more dark green. And that, just adding the dark green on the inside of the stem is gonna tone down the brown too. So I'm going over the brown, and I'm just adding a little bit of dark on the center. Okay. And so I want to show you the difference. So this one, I used an orange. Okay, can you see it? So this stem is an orange, and this stem has more brown. And of course, you don't have to do anything. You can leave it just green. So I want you to just see all three and do whatever you think would be best. I'm still not happy with this stem at all, so I'm gonna go over it again with water and I'm gonna blot it again. So I'm gonna go over water and I'm blotting. I'm gonna try to lift some of that color. So I'm gonna do the same thing down here. Sometimes with the brown, it gets really dark really fast, so you have to take some away. And you really have to rub the water into the brown and then blot. So more water, and then just go over the stem and kind of rub the water on top of it. And then lift it. Make sure it's a clean edge of the paper towel. See how I turn the paper towel? I like that better. So, blotting can help. I just wanted to show you what happens if you get too dark. You need to figure out how to fix it, how to blend it, and how to make it work for you. Just blot it away. So that looks better. It looks way more natural. And at this point, if you wanted to bring more yellow or oranges, we could do that. I'll just do a little bit. Make sure it's a good clean brush. And you need a lot of yellow for it to show. So I'm gonna just get tons of yellow on this tiny brush. And then this is dry, make sure it's dry. And you could just do little stripes and just go out. And keep dipping the brush. No more water, just lots of paint. And I think that's the final touch it needed right there. Okay, so you know how to make these peacock bookmarks or a painting. Hopefully you feel better about using your point brush and blending colors. Feel free, you could do a couple of these and you can play with colors. These are a good project. I don't think it should take you too long. I think this project is probably about, 45 minutes to an hour. So maybe your activities director will let you do 2 of them just so you can play with color differences. And just make sure to let it dry thoroughly and don't touch it because you'll smear your colors. Because we're not using a lot of water, this paper will not bend. With projects where we use more water, you always need to probably, after it's dry, put it under a book and let it flatten. I've seen a lot of people that their paper's curled, so that's just a tip. If you have anything that's curled, make sure to put it under a really thick book and flatten it, and this paper will go flat again. And make sure to clean your brushes out well. These brushes should last you a while. Just take good care of them. Okay, thanks.